Let's begin by removing the alternator. But wait, how did I get to this point? How do I know my alternator's bad? Let's back up. First, let's take a look at how an alternator works. You have an engine, and you have a battery. Most modern vehicles also have a computer to control all the different engine functions. When the ignition turns on, electricity is sent from the battery to the computer. When you turn the key to start or push the start button, power is then sent to the engine starter. When sensors in the engine tell the computer the engine's running, the computer sends a signal to the alternator to tell it to start charging the battery. A problem arises when the engine is running, but the alternator isn't charging. The alternator itself might be bad, not sending power to the battery, or the computer may not be sending a signal to the alternator to tell it to charge. In most cases, it's the alternator itself. With the alternator not charging and the engine still running, the fuel system, ignition system, and the lighting all will continue reducing the voltage of the battery until the engine can no longer run. In my case, I have a voltmeter in my instrument panel. I noticed the gauge reading lower than normal, combined with the starter seeming to crank slower than normal. I confirmed the lower voltage by connecting a digital voltmeter to the battery. 12.2 volts is actually quite low for a 12 volt system. You should be seeing around 13 volts when the battery is fully charged and healthy. When you start the engine, you should see a rise in the voltage as seen here. As soon as I start the engine and the alternator kicks in, I'm seeing over 14 volts. Sometimes when the alternator goes bad, it drops the voltage so low in the battery that the battery can't recover and also has to be replaced. So we begin by removing the battery and connecting a charger. While we're here, let's talk about chargers. Here I have two types of chargers. This Stanley charger is a smart charger. The Die-Hard charger is a not so smart basic charger. What's the difference? With the basic charger, you select the charge rate, the type of battery, and when the gauge indicates the battery is no longer accepting amperage, then you must manually disconnect it. The smart charger, when you connect the battery and begin charging, it will automatically stop when it senses the battery is full. Additional features include the battery voltage setting, which is simply a built-in digital voltmeter to tell you the current battery voltage. It has an alternator check feature, which tests the alternator's power, and it has a battery reconditioning feature, which can help bring back life to old batteries with a special charging algorithm. The majority of the time, I grab the smart charger, but basic chargers do have their place. There are times when a battery has been discharged so low that the smart charger gets confused about what type of battery is connected and will refuse to provide a charge. That's when I grab the basic charger, bring up the voltage, and finish the charge with a smart charger. So with the battery removed, I begin removing the air intake for access to the alternator. The accessory belt has to come off. If your accessory belt is already off, then that's probably why your alternator isn't working. Most of the times, you'll already know this since you'd also lose power steering, the water pump, and air conditioning. If your belt looks worn, now is the perfect time to replace it. This alternator appears to be held in with 3 bolts. Two of the bolts look very similar, so I'm doing a side-by-side comparison. I want to make sure that if they are different, they get installed in the same location. Using a small pocket screwdriver, I begin prying back on the rubber protective boot on the back of the alternator cable. If your vehicle is old like mine, it's probably going to break apart. I'll get a generic replacement. A caution about removing these plastic connectors. You'll need to pry on the little retaining arms to remove the connector. Pry too much and they'll break. Only pry enough to remove the connector. Another thing to check is the wire that runs from the alternator to the battery. These are fusible links. They're a portion of wire that break when too much current is detected to save the rest of the electrical system from overvoltage. I'm using a little silicone compound on the connectors for installation. It helps the seals keep the water out. It's also the time to slip on your replacement cable boot. On the replacement alternator, you'll see here it has a different angle connector for the cable. I tried to install it with this connector, but it put the cable at a weird angle. I ended up removing it and using the stud that was below it. Reinstall all the connectors and begin all the bolts by hand. If you've made it this far, please like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Also check out the video description for a link to my website, which has information on the chargers seen in this video. Reinstall the accessory belt, ensuring you have it routed correctly and it's centered on the pulleys correctly. As I reinstall the air intake, I make sure any sensors I disconnected are properly reconnected. Reinstall your new or old charged battery, making sure you don't have it connected backwards. And the engine starts without issue.